On behalf of the Asia Expert Working Group of the Local Public Sector Alliance, I would like to welcome you all to today's meeting. This is the second group meeting, actually. The first one was held in November 2022. My name is Rachana Shrestha. I work in Asian Development Bank, and I'm one of the 3 co-chairs of the Asia Group. I would like to call upon my other two co-chairs, Madhavi and Peter, to quickly introduce themselves. Madhavi?
Thank you, Rachna. Hello, everyone. I'm Madhavi Rajadhyaksha, and I lead the public sector governance portfolio at Oxford Policy Management. Looking forward to this discussion. Peter,
Thanks,
over to
Madhavi.
you.
Peter, yeah.
Thanks, Madhavi and Rachana. Very nice to see everybody on the line. I'm Peter Yates. I'm the Associate Director for Governance at the Asia Foundation. And I'm very glad that my colleague Bishnu Adhikari from our Nepal office is joining us today as part of the presentation. Back to you, Rachana.
Thank you, Peter. So yes, we do not have a very long agenda, but we'll start with the regional updates. We have Philip Gonzalez with us, Senior Director in the Forum of Federations. So thank you so much, Philip, for agreeing to do this updates. So without any much ado, I would like to hand over this floor to you. So over to you, Philip.
Thanks so much, Rachana, and so nice to see so many old friends and new friends. Another special mention to Vishnu. It's really nice to see his big smile today. Great to see you, mate. So look, I had the task of doing a roundup, and I wasn't really sure what that would involve. So I thought perhaps pragmatically to consider some of the countries that are perhaps doing better or worse. I don't know how we describe it. Regionally, when we consider local governance and we consider the spirit of decentralization. So I'm leaving aside Indonesia as well as Sri Lanka, and I'm going to focus on and Nepal, obviously, because Bishnu will cover that very well. But I will discuss Pakistan, Philippines, and India as well, because I think they're a bit of interest given some of the movements there. So I'll just read off my note today. And I'll begin with Philippines and place us very much on how they consider local government. And there are 4 categories in Philippines, which we might know. The barangay, cities and municipalities, provinces, and now, interestingly, through the BAM and the Republic Act of 1154, a Republic Act, and the Cordillera Administrative Region, there are 4 levels of local government. If I was to throw a blanket over the issues in Philippines, I would say that primarily we're seeing an inability of the LGUs to carry out devolved functions, an inadequacy, as we put it, of internal revenue shares to the LGU to meet the budgetary requirement of devolved functions. So that's a bit of a, I guess, an interesting dimension there. Not only are they unable to carry out the devolved functions, but they're not able to fund those functions as well. And so budgetary support is an issue. There's an interference with national government on personal and fiscal management. And I think we'll see a bit about that in the story from Nepal. And there's a need to broaden the local government unit tax base. And I think this is common to all of the countries that we are thinking about. Moving over to India, I think despite being centralized, a very centralized federal system, local governance across the country has outdone itself in terms of the mandate that it has. And what we're seeing is local government units competing with each other in terms of service delivery, which is one of the, I guess, the benefits that we consider when we're thinking about federal systems. And again, it's always about money. So the timely resource allocation of subnational local government units from the centre is a challenge, as service delivery remains a function of local government and the majority of resources are under the central control. There has been positive movement there in terms of intergovernmental transfers, which is beginning to, the coordination system is beginning to rectify or improve. And there is an impetus to strive for improving local governance for future challenges like that arose during COVID and so on. And we're looking at conflicts around disaster management as well. But these are our funded mandates. Over to Pakistan, and I think the big story in Pakistan is the issue around local government elections. And there we're looking at the, I'll focus on Punjab and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There in Punjab, we're expected to have elections in right now actually, but those are not taking place. The reason for this is amendments to the local government law, but we're seeing pressure from the High Court in Pakistan and the federal government and provincial government to move elections forward. In KP, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, elections did take place, but there is no provision for funds to elected members, and whilst elected members don't have a funded mandate, their administration is working to carry on the way that they carry on. I think this is kind of generally the issue around local government, is that we're seeing challenges about funding, challenges about elections, and therefore elected mandates of government officials. So I'll leave it there, because each country has a nuance unto itself. But to throw a blanket across everything, I'd say the challenges that are common are funding and resource allocation through the intergovernmental transfer system, and then the division between administration and elected officials. And I think we could probably say that is the case for many local government units, even here in Melbourne, Australia. So thanks very much. Back to you. Thank you, Rakshana.
Thank you so much, Philip. Yes, actually, it's hard to, though it is like, the issues are different in different countries. From my experience also, I've seen that most of the local governments actually suffer from the weak institutional capacity, primarily, which also includes not having adequate resources for them to undertake their mandates, which, seems to be a standard problem across many local governments across many countries, particularly in Asia and Pacific. That's what we have actually also witnessed or actually saw. So yes, Philippines is a very big country, and I think the institutional arrangements, as you said, it's not so straightforward. There are a lot of different layers, so that makes it the local government units quite small and not have that much of authority, though they might have a lot of functional responsibilities, and that makes it, again, that's a kind of a mismatch. They have a lot of functional responsibilities, but not enough capacity, not enough resources, and that seems, as you said, is the same challenges across many, in many countries across the region, actually. So we can hear from Vishnu later as to what are the specific or what kind of challenges he sees in Nepal, because Nepal, being a unilateral earlier had become a federal state of governments, though there was the local government units in Nepal before, but now it's kind of more structured with having more responsibilities and authorities. So we would like to hear from Vishnu, but maybe we can have a quick, any questions or answer or comments or observations or views people have. We can have a couple of minutes for that before we move to another agenda, which is actually Logica rollout. So let me see if people have any reactions, comments, questions to Philip. I think you can just unmute yourself and speak, because I might not be able to track everyone, the hands, or so it's sweet.
Well, one thing I'll say, just to support Philip, I've been doing some reading on Zambia this morning. And that's exactly the big problems, is the tensions between the bureaucrats and the politicians. The bureaucrats want to do things by the rule and use authority correctly, and the politicians want to go around that and deliver to the constituents so they can get reelected. I think it's a fundamental dynamic in many, many local government systems. So I think we're on solid ground, Philip.
Thanks, Rob.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Rajna, if I
Robin.
could add to both.
Madhavi.
Yeah, thanks, Philip, for the good roundup. It's often very difficult to do across countries like this. I find it tough even within India to generalize. But I think something that you said in terms of service delivery really resonated with me. And I think it was very evident during the COVID crisis, right? Where local governments were forced to take on a large mandate of service delivery and services beyond what were functionally assigned to them, only due to the circumstances. And then there were all these questions of funding capacities that came by. And I think that's common to local governments almost across all countries. So that's just a point I wanted to share.
Thank you, Madhavi. All right.
The only thing that I'd add, I think, to Robert's comment, I think there's an interesting, let's call it a dynamic between elections and local government units delivering services in the way that administration is carrying on without that democratic layer where they've got elected officials running service delivery, and they're not. And I'm thinking specifically in this case, perhaps of Sri Lanka and Pakistan and others, where they're not responsive to any particular element other than the central government. So this is a challenge that I think we see across local government units around the world. But as I mentioned, in particular in Pakistan and perhaps Sri Lanka and others. So I'll leave it there. Over to you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. So now we could actually move to the next item in our agenda, which is Logica. So we'd like to hear from Nick Travis, a very quick update on the Logica rollout, or an update. Okay, Nick, you are here, right? Over to you, Nick.
Yeah, I'm here. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great.
We do. Go ahead.
Good. Thank you, Rachana, and good afternoon, good evening, everybody. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Nick, and I'm a freelance consultant, but one of the many tasks that I have on the agenda is working with LPSA and Jamie Boex, who many of you know, assisting with the rollout and implementation of the Logica framework. So I think most of you will know that the Logica assessment tool developed by the LPSA over the last few years is a methodology used to evaluate the subnational governance structure of a country and the specific nature of the institutions that operate below the central government level. And the methodology has a number of different components or modules which provide varying degrees of detail on the nature of subnational institutions. And one of the core elements of the LPSA work program last year, this year, and going forward has been to roll out this methodology across a number of different countries with an aim of understanding the differences, similarities, and to sort of develop a comparative analysis and understanding of the different arrangements across different regions. There are many different elements to the Logica framework, but we're focusing at the moment on what we call the intergovernmental profile, which is sort of the first step of the process and focuses on identifying the basic structure of subnational governments below the central level, the types of entities that each of those levels are in terms of their level of how devolved they are, if they're devolved or not, if they're deconcentrated entities or a hybrid of both, or these kinds of questions, and to understand what the basic set of functional responsibilities are that each of those levels or entities at each level have. later on, we'll do a full assessment of the political, fiscal, and administrative elements of these entities. And in some countries, we're already thinking about implementing a scorecard, which actually aims to provide a quantitative assessment of the extent of overall autonomy of institutions that operate at the various levels. So there's various stages and various degrees of detail that you can apply depending on your level of interest and the resources that you have. So just to provide a brief update of where we've got to over the last few months, we've been focusing really on completing the first step, the intergovernmental profile, in a selection of different countries in South and Southeast Asia, and also a handful in Africa. In terms of the countries in Asia that we've been looking at, it's a whole range. I mean, most of the countries in South Asia have been included. So India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Pakistan coming up, hopefully. And then in Southeast Asia, we've been looking at Indonesia, Vietnam, Cambodia, South Korea, Timor-Leste, Japan, and the Philippines. So a very wide range of different countries at different levels of socioeconomic development and geographical location. And LPSA have been working with our partners at OPM, the Asia Foundation, together with a team of NYU graduate students who have been a valuable resource in helping us get the basics down on paper, to get this first batch of intergovernmental profiles completed. And we're hoping to finish those first batches hopefully by the end of April for most of the countries. There might be a couple of countries which take a little bit longer, but that's the plan. And then this will then culminate in a report that analyzes the state of governance institutions across the region, which, as I mentioned before, will hopefully provide a sort of a comparative analysis of the nature of these subnational entities. And so far, we're seeing quite a diverse range of characteristics across countries, as you would imagine, with varying degrees of autonomy in various different contexts. And this will be a core task for the next couple of months. I imagine we'll be looking to complete that work in May or early June. And so that will provide a sort of a first concrete, but aside from the individual country assessments, which will gradually be coming online as we complete them. And I think a couple have already been uploaded to the LPSA website, which you can view along with all the methodological documents and so on. So there'll be the individual country profiles that gradually get completed, as well as the sort of comparative analysis that will follow. And then lastly, as you can imagine, as we've done, so try to apply the methodology across a range of different countries, there have been some methodological issues. And so we'll also be aiming to, after the first batch of countries is complete, to do a review of the methodology and some of the issues that we've faced in applying it. We don't anticipate any major alterations, but maybe some greater granularity in some areas and some clarifications where the guidance may not be a bit challenging to fully understand in all contexts. So that's where we are. If any of you have any questions on the status of any of the specific country assessments or anything on the methodology, then please feel free to contact me or Jamie or any of the team, and we can get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks very much, Rajana and all.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks a lot. Yes, that's a lot in 5 minutes, a lot to explain in 5 minutes. So I'm glad that you also explain a little bit about the Logica, because I don't think everybody here are familiar about this Logica approach. So I'm glad that you explained what that is. So let's wait if people have any questions, comments, or any views on this. Again, please unmute yourself and speak.
Just share the Asia Foundation's experience. Our team in Nepal kind of led the Logica effort there, and then we've also been able to support the rollout in Bangladesh as well. And I just say for anyone on the line, it's been a fantastic experience for our program teams who are running different kinds of subnational programs in each country. But to engage in this process has been a really valuable professional experience for them as well, in terms of connecting them with some thinking outside of their immediate project work, but also in terms of kind of the conceptual and standardization approach that Logica takes has been really, really valuable as well. So I just encourage anyone, if you have a team in any of the countries mentioned and you're keen to, definitely reach out, because it's been a really valuable experience to be involved in.
Thank you, Peter. In fact, having this profile would be a tremendous knowledge source, I think, or knowledge, thing that would be useful for everybody, I think, government, development partners. So we really look forward to having this profile, and I think the comparative analysis would even be better. So yeah, we can have the update in every Asia Working Group meeting, actually. So any other thoughts or questions? All right, so let's move to our next agenda item, which is a presentation from our colleague from the Asia Foundation in Nepal, Vishnu Adhikari. So thank you so much, Vishnuji, for agreeing to do this presentation, because that's really, this is so, I'm sure that, this is useful for all of us in this in this area of decentralization, local governance, because Nepal being, we cannot call it a new federal, but it's still comparatively new compared to other countries. So we'd like to hear from you, the experience of implementation of federalism in Nepal. So without much ado, over to you, Vishnuji.
Thank you, Rachanaji. It's really great to be here with this group and be able to share some of our own reflections as we've been trying to be in the process with some programs. So let me, for that, I prepared a couple of slides to just walk you through, and I'll try to give some broad brush frame, and maybe we could have another 10-15 minutes for discussion. So let me put on the screen. Is it visible? Can you see that?
You can see that, Vishnuji.
Okay. All right. I think before moving into the update for the audience who might not be that familiar with Nepal, I felt it would be good to have a very brief context as to why this new constitution and what does it mean for Nepal. So the stride or the effort towards devolution or more power to the local subnational level actually began way back in Nepal, and as in the initial introductory remarks, Rachanaji just mentioned that the local units or the local governing systems in Nepal are not that new. So the first stride or the first introduction of this power devolution to the local level actually began only in 1950s with the global second wave of democracy. But within 10 years of a span, there was withdrawal. And for 1960 to 90, we had what we call guided democracy. So we had active authoritarian central government that basically didn't allow any much power going to the local level. And with the advancement of the democracy in the region as well as global level at 90s, in a decade of that 90s, that actually allowed Nepali people at large to be able to again begin this question about exercising their authority, their power at the local level. And that led to assertion of regional aspirations as well as identity, ethnic, and that ultimately culminated into a decade-long conflict, which many of you must have heard about, the Maoist-led conflict. So it was, apart from the Maoist conflict, there were also other assertions for local autonomy, local identity, and power at the local level. And finally, in 2006, we had this final national level of struggle, or the uprising that we call, and that culminated into a peace accord that basically provided a framework that, apart from the ending of that 10 years of conflict, the country would move into a radical decentralization and transfer of power at the local level by creating provincial structure, as well as the more power to the local level or to the local regional groups. And from 2007 to 15, it took 2 rounds of Constituent Assembly elections to actually negotiate in the framework and the structure and the way that the power would be devolved, or the power would be restructured or decentralized across the country. And it was only in 2015 there was a temporary political settlement with this framework of constitutions that we have, what we call 2015 new constitution, that created this framework of 3 tiers of government at the federal, and 7 provinces and local government. So that's the broad context, in essence, that the whole process of devolution or power to the local level, it's not that new to Nepal in one hand, but actually the opportunity for the subnational level citizen to be able to exercise their power began mainly from this new constitution in 2015. So since then, what this new constitution mean actually in essence is, until this new constitution, we had a hierarchical system with 1 unitary government and 5 development regions as delegated agencies and 14 divisions, and lots of these delegated agencies of the unitary system across the country. And at the local level, we had what we call village government and the municipal government, which allowed the public to choose their leaders as elected officials. However, their power, their function were very, very limited. So the major shift this new constitution introduced is creating this horizontal 3 spheres of government. At the local level, what we call local government, which is municipal and the local government, and a new tier is created as provinces, which is a culmination of the development regions, 14 regions, and the districts, and at the federal level, 1 federal government. So the major shift from this hierarchical unitary to this horizontal 3 spheres of federal structure, what does it mean at the provincial and the local level? Mean division of executive, legislative, and some judicial function across all 3 spheres. More affirmative measures, particularly for representation of the gender and minority groups, both ethnic and caste groups, across all these 3 levels of entities. By doing that, the constitution was supposed to be also delineating clarity in terms of their function. So it created a concurrent functions of all 3 levels of government, and the 3 levels of government are meant to work in a cooperative way by coordinating and accepting each other's coexistence, and they cooperative cooperate each other to deliver on the assigned function. So that's the overall architect of this new structure. So with that design, since 2015, how far have we come along? At the macro level, the whole trend seems to be still on the right direction. However, there are lots of unfinished and inconsistency, unfinished work, or works that are yet to be initiated, or inconsistency already being seen. However, at the macro level, what we could see is the direction of this constitution seem to be still on the right direction. So with the introduction of this new constitution, the first major restructure of the government that happened was the reorganization of the local units, or the local government units that we had about 4,000 down to 753. That was a big political and quite challenging exercise, though it didn't have the kind of consultation and deliberation amongst the political leaders themselves or the parties to it. However, the way that it was completed was broadly accepted once we had the elections in 2017. So first major implementation of this constitution could be considered as the reconfiguration or reorganization of the local units from about 4,000 to 753. And then based on that unit and the creation of the 7 provinces, the elections in 2017 could be considered actually the start of the implementation of this constitution. And since then, once we had these elected officials, the first task was to harmonize the existing laws that we had under the unitary system to the new constitution framework, as well as adjusting or reassigning the employees or the civil servants that we had under the unitary system to this newly created political units. So from 2015 to 2019, we saw a major shift of implementing the initial phase of this constitution. And in that short period, we noted a lot of inconsistency, unwillingness, and resistance across all levels, including with the bureaucracy as well as the political forces themselves. Many of them trying to switch to their constituency, change their position from where they had to where they found in this new structure. And then we faced with this COVID crisis, and that actually, like in many other cases, is the case you refer in India, that the elected officials at the local level were the one to face the pressure and the crisis the most at the local level, and that created force for them to negotiate with the federal government for transfer of more function and resources, and also seek coordination. And as that crisis was deepening, we saw also the provincial and the local government trying to come together to form their position and begin this negotiation with the federal level. In the context that this whole devolution or the shift from a unitary to the federal structure in Nepal it's what we call federal-led devolution. It's centrally guided or centrally led federalism that we had. So the subnational government, the province and the local had very little realization of their position and be able to come together and negotiate with the federal level. So the the COVID provided that time for them to form their position and begin to assert a bid. And after the completion of these 5 years of their tenure, there was a lot of uncertainties whether the country would actually move into the second cycle of elections because of the uncertainties about this whole system and the structure and the institutions that were still in the formation phase. However, we saw a very successful or a completion of, again, 3 levels of elections in 2022 and peaceful transfer of power. So again, at the macro level, given the context and given the lack of preparation, what we see the succession of the second round of elections is a gradual move towards stabilization and acceptance at the macro level to this new system. However, there are lots of areas where we haven't seen much progress in order for these 3 levels of government to be functional, and particularly for the subnational units to be effective, as the sectoral legislation in the core service areas, as well as assigning the civil servants at the local level has barely begun. So that is at the macro level where we see so far. And in this 7 or 8 years since the start of this constitution, there are many, many issues and challenges. However, of all, if we were to summarize some of the key challenges or the key issues for this system to progress properly, first and foremost is establishing clarity between and amongst these 3 spheres of government. Because of this lack of functional clarity or overlap of functions, there is a risk of each of the levels not being able to take their responsibilities adequately. And as we know that this contention and the dispute between the levels of government is an obvious form of a federal system. And for them to be resolved, there has to be this proper systems and institutions for resolving those disputes. And those systems and the institutions and the process are yet to become functional for resolving the differences and bring those disputes to an amicable solution. Likewise, just in the first couple of years, we also have already started noticing a trend that the federal government particularly is still unwilling to accept the extent of devolution that the Constitution has envisaged in the form of the federal legislations that we saw the last 7-8 years. Each and every single federal laws tried to limit the autonomy of the local and provincial government. And also what we noted is a very weak deliberative practices, again, at each level as well as amongst and between, and that limiting civic participation to the deliberations. So those are the macro level issues and challenges that we could draw upon, and particularly at the subnational level or at the province and the local level. These are some of the core challenges that we have noted from our observation, which is except a couple of local governments, none of the local as well as the provincial governments are self-reliant on their revenue, and therefore they have to be dependent at the federal level, meaning they don't have the financial autonomy. As well as there is a trend that we have noted that the federal government would just want to hand over mandates to the province and the local level without much consultations and their engagement and without accompanying the necessary resources for them to be able to implement, as well as a huge lack of human resources, both at the province and the local level. Though the Constitution mandate them to have their own civil servants, however, the federal government has constrained them by lack of its willingness to create this standard for civil servants, so that the province and the local government could have their own human resources, as well as because of their own revenue, they're not able to fulfill that shortage of human resources. So on an average, we have about 35% of local government offices being run in the last 7-8 years without having their own staff. And it's from a basis that we had under the unitary system, there is considerable fiscal transfer is being made from the federal to the level at an average of 20 to 24. However, with the COVID, what we have also noted is these transfer are tied with more condition than they should be given to the local level. Again, because of this limited revenue basis, because of this unfunded mandates, as well as because of the attachment of conditions as the fund goes to the local level, we see this limiting the autonomy and the functional independence of the province and the local government. Even under all of these circumstances, however, what we could see is there are some gains. So the whole picture is not as gloomy and disturbing. If we were to identify a few of the major areas where we could still be paying attention to. So the first and foremost is acceptance of this new system by the major political forces as well as the citizens themselves. So even though we had 10 years of deliberations on these new constitutions, however, there were very limited consultations and the discussions about the extent of power that would go to the local level. And as we saw this new constitution, there were lots of doubts and actually quite strong resistance from some of the regional groups and actually not accepting the whole framework. However, with the completion of these 2 rounds of elections, what we noted is the major political forces agreed to contest on the basis of this division and the structure, as well as the Asia Foundation has been tracking the public perceptions through public opinion survey. So in our last 4 rounds of survey since 2017, what we have seen is public having more awareness about what the provinces are, as well as the local government. So people beginning to understand why they have these different structures and the different units and what they mean for them. Likewise, because of this new structure and with the periodic elections, we also saw opportunity for new generation to get to the leadership, as well as opportunities for the regional political forces to gain power, and also opportunity for the minority groups, the women groups, representation or participation in this process because of this reservation or the quota system that we have. Likewise, some foundational policies are now in place in order for these tiers of government to resolve their disputes. For example, through this intergovernmental coordination laws, the fiscal management policies, and the local government operation aid. So the core fundamental legislations are in place based on which the levels of government could now begin to assert their position and renegotiate and deepen these deliberative policy reform processes. And finally, the major threats or the challenges that we see in the next round or needing more attention for this system to be more functional. First and foremost, the way this electoral system has been created by this new constitution, where we have direct and proportional representation system, both at the federal and the provincial level, would mostly end up as having hung parliament. So in the last 2 rounds of election, what we saw is, though we have 2 traditional dominant political forces with quite a strong presence all over the country, neither of them, despite of their alliances and coalitions, were able to garner majority. And with this the mixed election system, there is unlikely that we'll have a governing party gaining a simple majority. So because of this electoral system, people seem to be getting frustrated that we're not going to get a stable government, and the public's perception could very quickly turn against the system. Likewise, the federal overreach that we have seen so far in 6 to 7 years, unless the federal itself accept this framework and enable the subnational, we still see a risk of people getting frustrated as the subnational won't be able to provide the necessary services or improve their efficiency until the federal accepts the reality. However, we don't see that happening automatically. The other risk that we see is because of this economic global strain, what people are expecting is the new system to resolve or provide everything that they were expecting. However, as the transition is still shaky, it isn't going to suddenly change the context and improve the services, and therefore people are going to be better off. So again, the public is likely to turn against the whole system. And finally, in the second round of election, what we noted is emergence of some regional and some fringe and traditional political forces standing on anti-federalism platform. And if this lack of functional clarity and lack of cooperation between the federal and the provinces and the local continues, this may provide more opportunity for the anti-federalist forces to stand against the whole system. So this is what I try to give you a very broad picture of where we stand, and happy to take your questions, queries, and observation. Thank you. Over to you, Rachanaji.
Thank you so much, Bishnuji. Yeah, this is very quick. I mean, in 30 minutes, you took us through the history and the present and also the likely threats that there are. So let me actually open the floor, because though I can ask you questions, and being a Nepali myself, I can relate, I can see that the challenges and all, which you have articulated very well. So I'll open okay, Jesper. I was going to call Jesper, but I'm glad Jesper is here. So over to you, Jesper. We'd like to hear from you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Rachana. And also thank you, Bishnu, for, I think, a very well well thought through overview of all the challenges and achievements. I think you really hit the points. I just wanted to add a few additional points because I think you had more than 95% of all the challenges I would also have raised and even more. I think one of the issues I've noted when I have worked in Nepal, I think since 2000 and also the recent reform, is that when the reform started, it was without a monitoring and evaluation system of the local government and a proper performance assessment system. And also that has led to a lack of trust from central to local governments. The central government has not been able to get any information about what is happening in service delivery, what is happening with the funds they have sent, and particularly and the links between the two. Even the associations have requested a monitoring system now, but the central government has not developed an M&E system. And therefore, we come into a situation where money is transferred without accountability, without knowing how they have been spent. Often funds are not utilized, and so on and so forth. And they're not allocated according to the absorption capacity and the performance of the local governments. That's one of the major issues. The second issue I'd like to add is the resource allocation. The new fiscal commission, National Resource and Finance Commission, is allocating money without any transparency. All experts have tried to find out what is the actual allocation formula, and nobody have been able to get the answer. And it used to work very well before the reform. We had allocation formula. We knew how money was allocated. Everyone could get the allocation criteria, could see how funds were linked to that. But now, if you ask how funds are allocated, you get a list of criteria, but you don't see any relationship between these criteria and the actual allocation. So the grant system, the block grant system, is simply in a very poor situation, and often it is not based on objective criteria for allocation or need-based poverty criteria and so on. And the formula is so convoluted and complex, and criteria, I could talk for hours about it, but it is one of the major problems. And then this new commission is not very well linked to the Ministry of Finance, and they have also a committee there, an intergovernmental finance committee, looking at issues on intergovernmental relations, and is not linked to that. And I think the problem is the way this fiscal commission is set up. It's very different from India, where the commission every 5 years, suggest allocation, resource allocation formulas, and everyone kind of adhere to that. It might not be the best, but it's transparent, and resources are allocated in a transparent manner. But in Nepal, that's a major problem. And then the third, I think, issue which was lost when the reform came in 2015 up to 17 was the focus on performance. There used to be a very well elaborated and working system of performance-based grant allocations, which allocated funds and provided incentives to local government to improve their performance. But that system was also lost, and the fiscal commission has been trying to see what could be done. But there has been this notion that now, where we have a federal state, there should not be any control from central government of the local government performance. So now it's up to local government to decide on everything. And I think that will backfire after some years. And we can already see it now, as you said, the conditional grants are coming back, the control is coming back, people are losing trust. So if you don't introduce a good performance assessment system, which is linked to the actual resource allocation, you might risk of having a return to an old centralized system with less autonomy. So I think we are in a poor cycle now. I see central government wants to centralize again because they have lost the trust. The transparency is not there, no monitoring system, and so on and so forth. So we need to try to explore tools which can bring it back on track and really reap the benefit of the federal system and provide autonomy, but autonomy under transparency and accountability, where you combine the two sets, where you can allocate more autonomy, but also under some kind of monitoring system and accountability. Thank you. This was just what I wanted to add to the very good, I think, overview of issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Yash. But actually, we need to have another webinar where we would like to hear your views on the whole fiscal decentralization aspects, because I remember very well on you working on this minimum conditions performance measures, which I still think is fantastic because that's so good. But then before it could take, it had taken some roots, but before it could actually really be institutionalized, we had this change of governance system in Nepal. And we have been, the government has been, as a development partners, so we have been telling the government that there should be a larger performance-based grant system. And you are absolutely correct that these allocations remain, a little, the transparency and all those issues. But we would really would like to hear from you on the fiscal decentralization and on this, monitoring aspects that you talked about, the minimum conditions performance measures. So maybe someday we can request you to share those very good insights that you have. So thank you so much. We have a question from Saswat. So Vishnuji, let's take a few questions and then maybe you can respond, right? So yes, Saswatji, over to you.
Thank you very much. I just want to add some point on it. Thank you very much, Vishnuji, and thank you very much. You guys were really nice, and I really agree with that. Regarding monitoring and evaluation, yeah, we have really weak monitoring and evaluation system. For example, the District Coordinates Committee is responsible for monitoring the service delivery at local units, local governance system. But the local government elected representatives are not obliged to take that feedback from the DCC. So very weak accountability system, and most of our progress is paper-based. For instance, there is a system that we have to have a JC focal person at each local government. But if we just write a letter that we have a local government, for instance, if a local government just writes a letter that we have a JC focal person in respective local governments, that's it. There is no evaluation or monitoring on that. Yeah, they do not have a specific QR, and there is no performance appraisal of that. So yeah, and the allocated efficiency in the local government system is really weak, right? So there is the highest allocated efficiency within the local government, 76%. So there is a lot of margin in that as well. There can be adequate resources, but are local government aware enough to use those resources? And there is a really lack of support from the federal government system as well. I can talk for hours on this, but these are main points I just wanted to add. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Saswatji. I agree with you completely. So let's see if there are other hands. Otherwise, Vishnuji, your response, reactions. Some of those are information more than questions. But yes, over to you.
I agree, yes, for 100% with your observation. I recall our conversation when you were in country recently. I think what is going on in this transition is those systems and processes and tools that were introduced and were functioning to some extent under the previous dispensation has been lost in this transition. And the subnational governments are yet to, I think, come up with their own way to be able to agree on what tools, systems, and processes would allow them to be accountable and allow them to self-correct their processes. So what we see, the fundamental challenge is who is to lead this negotiation and processes. For example, if we go to the relevant federal ministry, which is the what we call MOFAGA, Ministry of Federal Affairs and General Administration, it doesn't seem to have the same level of mandate that it used to have before. And similarly, when we go to the local government, they don't seem to be accepting that the same level of involvement and the steer that we used to have before. And when you look at the local government association themselves, they seem to be again in that confusion or in transition. So I fully agree with your observation that those processes and systems of accountability, transparency that were being tested and were beginning to have some impact at the local level seem to have lost. And with respect to the fiscal transfer, again, the point that you mentioned, I completely agree. So maybe the next level of reform that could begin is the amendment of these two principal fiscal management legislation that we have, which were enacted before the election of the last parliament. Because those legislation, the fiscal transfer management and the creation of the fiscal commission had limited the autonomy or the power of the commission itself. We understand that that is perhaps the first step that has to take place that would enable the fiscal commission to be able to assert itself as an autonomous and independent commission as the Constitution envisages. And to happen that, again, what I earlier mentioned, the federal parliament, the federal ministry itself, they need to accept this reality and demonstrate that willingness to move to that direction. So I agree. Currently, I don't think the commission has the level of autonomy in order to fulfill the mandate of the Constitution as it is envisaged.
Right. Thank you so much, Vishnuji. Let's see if there are more reactions, questions. Yeah, please feel free to unmute yourself and speak. Let's wait. Right. I think we are running out of time as well.
I just wanted to add one more thing. There are good practices being done within the local government as well, but we do not have that knowledge management system, so that we can share the learnings in between the local governments as well. So just wanted to add that. Thank you very much.
Thanks again, Sasuji. So I think we can now move to our, given the time, and we started late as well. So actually we are towards the end of our program already. So if we do not have any other questions, but you know, it's very interesting to hear Jesper, because Jesper has done some very interesting work in Nepal as on the minimum guy. I love this minimum conditions and performance measures that we had in Nepal. So maybe we can hear from him someday on this on these fiscal decentralization aspects. So with that, we can move to we are towards the end of our program, and this is where we can talk about the planning. Now, this is our second Asia Working Group meeting, and to make it more useful, to make it more interactive, we would like to get your views as to how you what kind of things that you'd like to see in this group meeting, so that we plan our group meetings accordingly. Any thematic areas that you would like us to focus on, that we can bring people from different organizations or experts in particular areas. So this few minutes, we can take few minutes to hear from you, your views, suggestions, advices on our future meetings. So. I read here, I mean, yeah, Jesper says that in climate finance, that's climate change, climate actions, adaptation, integrating climate change into the local governance. I think these are also very interesting, and so that would be one area, though Jesper didn't mention that this is as a suggestion, but I picked it up from that's, and you also mentioned, Jesper, that you are trying to include this climate change adaptation as an indicator in the finance and grant system. So this could be an area, but I don't know. So I'll wait if there are any. Okay, Puruji, over to you, Puruji.
Thank you, Rachnaji. Thank you very much for this very much informative and comprehensive debate. why don't we cover the horizontal learning process among the subnational government? Because there are so many good practices like Shashwatji just shared. We can learn from each other at horizontal level, and that can also give their big hand to bargain or raise their demand to the federal government as well.
Yes, thank you, Purushottam sir. I didn't realize you were Purushottam sir. I just saw Puru here, so thank you so much. Yes, certainly, we take note of that. Charlotte, over to you, Charlotte.
Hello, Rachana. Hello, everyone. No, I just wanted to say thank you for this presentation today. It was really interesting to have these insights on Nepal. And yeah, I just wanted to stress that climate finance indeed could be a very good topic to go further, like the tracking initiatives. I think there's still a lot of things to do, work to be done, and research and exchanges. So yeah, and I think from the OECD perspective, it's a very interesting topic for us as well. In addition to all the topics that were mentioned today, of course. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Absolutely. Yeah, actually, climate finance and also for local governments and subnational governments, climate actions are very, very important. So yes, we took note of that. Thank you. So I do not see any other hands. Rob, would you like to come in and maybe any views, thoughts, or any things that you'd like to share here?
Sure. Well, I thought it was very, very interesting, the presentations, and I was really happy that there were so many knowledgeable people about Nepal on this webinar. It's always interesting to hear the perspectives from people that have thought about this for a long time. I guess moving forward, I'm thinking that this was, I was thinking that this was a pretty good meeting in terms of the pace of it and the structure. And I'm pretty happy with the experience, honestly. I'm just looking forward to the next one. Climate financing sounds really interesting. I mean, it's something that all local jurisdictions are thinking about. There's so many other topics that we could be thinking about. Actually, when I saw the SNG standing for subnational governments, it also made me think of the Sustainable Development Goals. And I think that's a subject too that a lot of us will be interested in. If we're not now, it'll be coming up in the future. How are we going to localize the SDGs? But overall, I would like to thank Bishnu. I thought it was a really wonderful presentation, and I learned a lot. I also liked, as I said, the discussion of the regional update, and just to find out what's going on. Generally, thumbnail sketches and in different countries I found interesting, and the logical framework is something that we're going to be, looking at. It's going to become more and more interesting as the reports are finalized. Well, the assessments are finalized, and then the reports are produced. So I think the upcoming meetings are going to become even better. I think we'll move from strength to strength. I didn't really expect to be sounding like such a cheerleader, but I just thought this was a really great second meeting. Thanks for asking.
Thank you, Rob. Yes. Yeah, because this is very young. This group is very young, and the purpose of the Local Public Sector Alliance is to build this, as the name says, to have this alliance so that we can have a in-depth dialogue, discussions on this topic, and also create this knowledge that could be useful for everyone, and share the knowledge that we have. So this is a forum that we could use for knowledge sharing, exchange, dialogue, a debate, and so we could do a lot of things. So thank you so much. If we do not, yes, think, Rob.
I just think that at least for me, sometimes my great idea is going to pop into my mind in 20 minutes. So maybe we could encourage all the participants to get in contact with us. as needs be anytime between now and the next meeting. I mean, we're always available. There's I think email addresses to reach us. And just because we're not having a webinar doesn't mean we're not active and we can't be having exchanges.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that reminder, Rob. And also I see the Charles have written is that people could bring links to reports or papers, even drafts, and they know about that are relevant to the regional update on the topic of the day. So I'm sure that you have visited the LPSA website. You can find a lot of very useful information and updates, and on the events program that is planned, etc. So let's keep it vibrant, useful, and interactive. So if we have any other business, Madhavi, Peter, anything else you want to add?
Nothing else from me. I really like Chaz's idea. We do want this to be a knowledge sharing space as well. So please do come to future meetings with opportunities to share and spruik latest publications or work that you've been working on. That's very much one of the purposes of this meeting. So just second that indeed. And Rachana, thank you very much for chairing this meeting. Like Rob said, definitely second. It's been really productive.
Thank you, Peter. Madhavi, anything else to add?
Thanks, Rachana. Nothing really much to add, but just to also invite more presenters, right? Because this is really an open forum. So if anyone here or your teams back in your organization would like to come forward and share your regional work, we can always use these meetings or set up separate webinars for that as well. Thanks a lot, Rachana, for hosting this and for everyone for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we are really sorry that for the technical problem, but I'm sure that you understand. So thank you so much. So with this, let's close our meeting today, and we look forward to having you in our next meeting. We will share with you the dates and information through our, the website, right? The LPSA decentralization.net website. So thanks again. Bye-bye.